Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Alaikum salam.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam, wa alayhi wassalam. All praise is due to Allah, Rabb, cherisher and sustainer of all the worlds. May peace and blessings be upon the noble messenger, his family and companions. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu an Muhammadan Rasulullah. None has the right to be worshipped except Allah, and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. This is week number 15, I believe. I'm not sure. If I'm wrong, forgive me. It's been a long time. And we'll be reading from the chapter on Christians again. We're starting back with the topic of polygamy. I didn't finish it. For those people who didn't hear it, can hear this part also. There is no record of Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, opposing polygamy. It would have meant that he would have condemned the practice of the prophets before him. There are a number of examples of polygamous marriages among the prophets recorded in the Torah. Prophet Abraham was in Genesis, had 2 wives, 16:13. Prophet David recorded in the first book of Samuel, 27:3. And David dealt with Achish at Gath, he and his men, every man with his household, and David with his 2 wives. Solomon is said to have 700 wives in the Bible. 700 wives. I don't know how he handled that. I couldn't.
Too much.
I can't handle one sometimes, and he had 700. I'm not even going to attempt to name them, but they're in many places in the Bible where he said he had 700 wives. In fact, the Torah even specified laws regarding the division of inheritance in polygamous circumstances. Could you imagine trying to split your inheritance 700 times among your wives? SubhanAllah. First of all, you'd have to be rich enough to give 700 people something. He said, if a man, in the book of Deuteronomy said, if a man has 2 wives, the love one and the other is disliked. So apparently you could love one wife and not love the other one, which doesn't make any sense in Islam at all. We have to share even the love equally. According to Father Eugene Hillman, nowhere in the New Testament is there any explicit command that marriage should be monogamous. Monogamous means one only. Or any explicit commandment forbidding polygamy. He further stressed the fact that the church in Rome banned polygamy in order to conform to Greco-Roman culture, which prescribed only one legal wife. One legal wife. You can have as many girlfriends or whatever you want to call them, while tolerating concubinage and prostitution. So if you had one legal wife and many prostitutes as you could handle, you were a good man. Islam limited polygamy to a maximum of 4 wives at one time and stipulated the maintenance of justice of a basic condition for polygamy. In the Quran, chapter 4, verse 3, God states, "Marry of the women that please you 2, 3, or 4. But if you fear that you will not be able to deal justly, then marry only one." And this dealing justly is not just with money, not just with love. It contains everything. Right down to the same food with the same one. Even one sheikh explained to me that if you had sex with your wife this way this night, the next way, you should have sex the same way. So it's every detail. So it's very hard. And I know there's one place where Allah said you will never be able to deal with them justly, even though you want to. So it's a very hard thing to do. Me personally, it's not for me. Christian scriptures, authorship. Now we're going to talk about the authorship of the Christian scriptures. And this is not an easy topic. According to biblical scholars, even the authorship of the Old Testaments, the books, and the Gospels themselves is in doubt. For instance, in the book written by Bart Ehrman, and in just about every book that he writes, he puts 1 page, at least every one that I have read. He said you will have a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And you notice there's 5 times with no original. He has studied Greek, Hebrew, Latin, all the languages of all of the manuscripts have been written in before, and he says that none of them are originals, they are copies. So the books of the Bibles are based on copies, non-original material. The Torah itself, which we call in English we call it the Old Testament, there are the first 5 books of the Bible. It's also called the Pentateuch, are traditionally attributed to Prophet Moses. However, there are many verses within these books which indicate that Prophet Moses could not possibly have written anything in them. For example, in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 34, verse 5 and 8 states, "So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord, and he buried him in the valley of the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. But no man knows the place of his burial to this day. Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eyes was not dim, nor his natural force abated. And the people of Israel wept for Moses in the plains of Moab for 30 days. Then the days of the weeping and mourning for Moses ended." It is quite obvious that someone else wrote these verses about Prophet Moses' death. If he was dead, how did he write this book of the Pentateuch? In the appendix of the Revised Standard Version, entitled Books of the Bible, the following is written concerning the authorship of over one-third of the remaining books of the Old Testament. It says the book of Judges was possibly written by Samuel. The book of Ruth, perhaps written by Samuel. 1 Samuel, unknown. 2 Samuel, unknown. 1 Kings, unknown. 2 Kings, unknown. 1 Chronicles, unknown. Esther, unknown. Job, unknown. Ecclesiastes is doubtful whether it was even written at all, I guess. Jonah, unknown. Malachi, nothing known. So that's one-third of the Old Testament, and they don't know who any of the authors are. Apocrypha, more than half of the world's Christian are Roman Catholics. Their version of the Bible was published in 1582 from Jerome's Latin Vulgate, and reproduced in a Douay-Rheims in 1609. The Old Testament of the Roman Catholic version contains 7 more books than that of the King James Version, recognized by the Protestant world. The extra books are referred to as the Apocrypha, which means of doubtful authority, and were removed from the Bible in 1611 by Protestant Bible scholars. Who they are, I don't know, and I'm not sure anybody knows. The Gospels. Aramaic was the spoken language of the Jews of Palestine. Consequently, it is believed that Jesus and his disciples spoke and taught in Aramaic. Aramaic is an ancient form of Arabic. The earliest oral tradition of Jesus' deeds and sayings undoubtedly circulated in Aramaic. However, the 4 Gospels were written in an entirely different speech, common Greek, spoken language of the civilized Mediterranean world, to serve the majority of the church. So the original language of Jesus was not even written in the original Gospels, of which we have none now. If you had it, it would be written in Aramaic, and I think there's maybe only 5 people in the world who can slightly understand it. Traces of Aramaic survive in the Greek Gospels. For example, in Mark 5:41, taking her by the hand, he said to her, I can't even pronounce this, Talitha Kami, which means little girl. I say to you, arise. And Mark 15:34, in the 9th hour Jesus cried with a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, sabachthani, which means, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? This is a verse that I could never understand as a Christian. If Jesus was God or Son of God, why would he ask God, why did you forsake me? If he's God, he knows what's going on. If this is Son of God, he knows what his Father's doing. Why would he say, why did you forsake me? So this is one of the verses that confused me as a Christian.
And also if he's, say from a Christian point of view that he was willingly to sacrifice, his life for the sin of others, why is he complaining?
Yes. There's many reasons why this verse is either not true or it's not from the words of Jesus. There are some doubt about this. There are some people who believe that it was not Jesus on the cross. They believed it was, it said Simon. Because it says that God put the face of Jesus on another. And he was the one who was crucified. This verse by itself, if it's true, could lead you to believe that this person didn't know why he was being crucified.
Yes.
So it does leave many doubts and many conflicts and contradictions. So the Christians themselves don't understand this, and I didn't understand this. The New Gospel of Mark, though considered by the church scholars to be the oldest of the Gospels, was not written by a disciple of Jesus. Biblical scholars concluded, based on the evidence contained in the Gospel, that Mark himself was not a disciple of Jesus. Which is true, he couldn't have been. He was only... His mother owned the house where they had... where Jesus is supposed to come back, and the disciples were there. And he said, Why are you staring at me? Why are you frightened? Why are you scared? This was the house of Mark's mother. At that time, he was only, I think they said 8 or 9 years old, so he wouldn't even known enough to know who Jesus was, let alone be one of his disciples or understand anything. In fact, all the Gospels originally circulated anonymously. In other words, there was no name on the Gospels. That's only been put on recently. Authoritative names were later assigned to them by unknown figures in the early church. The Gospel of Matthew is author unknown, as well as Mark, Luke, and John, and Acts. 1, 2, 3, and 4, John, the author of John. So you see, we don't really know who... There's 14 other books of the Bible, actually, that was written by Paul. So the majority of the Bible was written by Paul. And these were published before these 4 books we were talking about, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. J.B. Phillips, a breviary, I don't know what a breviary, of the Chichester Cathedral, or the Anglican Church of England, wrote the following preface for his translation of the Gospel according to St. Matthew. Early tradition ascribed this Gospel to the Apostle Matthew, but scholars nowadays almost all reject this view. The author, whom we can conveniently call Matthew, has plainly drawn on the mysterious Q, which may have been a collection of oral traditions. He used Mark's Gospel freely, though he has rearranged the order of events and has in several instances used different words for what is plainly the same story. The fourth Gospel of John was opposed as hereditarical in the early church, and it knows none of the stories associated with John, son of Zebedee. In the judgment of many scholars, it was produced by a school of disciples, probably in Syria in the last decades of the 1st century. I know there was a movement for a long time. Some of the scholars of Christianity don't even want to accept the book of John. They believe that John was insane at the time he wrote it. He died, I believe, in prison from insanity. This is, that was quite a mouthful of things to say. And it's taken us 3 weeks to say it. That's the end of the chapter on Christians. By no means is this even close to all the great wealth of knowledge that is available for Christians. You can read from their own scholars and get a lot of information. There's also many former Christians who have become Muslim who also have much to say. So you can read and read and read. This is enough for a minimum. Most of the stuff that we've talked about the last 3 weeks in this book, most of the Christians don't know. This is a good start to talk to anybody about Islam. So if there's no questions on this chapter, we're going to go on to Hindu for Daiwa. Hindu is a religion that originated in India from the valley of Hind. That's why they're called Hindus. And is still practiced there, as well as in those countries within the Indian cultural sphere, chiefly Southeast Asia, and those with resident communities in Indian stock, chiefly Southeast Asia, East Africa, South Africa, and Britain. The word Hindu is derived from the Sanskrit word Sindhu, which means river, more specifically the Indus River. The Persians in the 5th century BC called the Hindus by name, identifying them as the people of the land of the Indus, the Hindus. Own definitions of their community are Santana Dharam, old tradition, or Vautanic Dharam, those who believe in the Vedas, or those who follow the way, or Dharma. the 4 classes or caste and stages of life or ashramas. That's a lot of words. You have different forms of Hinduism called by different names. For instance, in Thailand it's called Buddhist. The king of Thailand, a long time ago, went to India to visit. And when he came back from India, he brought back Hinduism, but he put his own name on it and decided how they were going to follow the rules of Hinduism, and he came up with Buddhism. So it's still the same thing, it's just different ways. I was watching a television show the other day, and a Hindu himself said they have more than 3 million gods. Actually, he said 3,300,000. I can't even imagine how you're supposed to know which God you're supposed to pray to for which thing. It's... Alhamdulillah, we only have one. I don't know how these guys do it. I know in Thailand, one time we were walking down the street and I saw a tree. And it was not a very pretty tree. It looked like it had been run into a few times by cars and trucks and stuff. But it had gold ribbons around it and flowers all around it. And people had put fruit there. And some people had taken nails and put money on the tree. Several different kinds of things. So I asked, what is this? And they said, they said somebody was praying by this tree and he won the lottery. So from then on, everybody goes to this tree and says, please let me win the lottery. So when they go to pray, they have to leave something there. So all of these things were there by people who were praying to win the lottery. Well, they actually built the street around this tree. They didn't want to cut this tree down because they're afraid it is a god. So anything can become a god. The fundamental principles of Hinduism. Among Hindus, there are far more uniformity in ritual than in belief is found. Although all share very few practices or beliefs, many Hindus worship Shiva, Vishnu, or the goddess, or Deva. But they also worship hundreds of additional minor deities peculiar to a particular village or even to a particular family. The scriptures, there are several sacred scriptures of the Hindus. So how do you know which one to follow? There are several versions of the Bible. How do we know which one to follow? If there's several, there is also several versions, come to think of it, of the Buddhist book. I was Buddhist for a while, and that's why I went outside of Buddhism, is because I was following their book, and every time I found something wrong, I'd say, aren't we supposed to do this? And they call him a monk. They don't call him an imam, they call him a monk. He'd say, no, we don't do that.
They didn't follow.
No, whatever I was saying, he said, no, that's okay, we don't follow that. I said, well, this religion is no better than Christian is. There's no sense in me following this. If you can make your own rules, I don't need a book. It's easy for me. I just make my own rules and go on. SubhanAllah. The most widely read book among Hindus, and I can't say this, Bhagavad Gita. It's a part of the Mahabharata. We're going to need an Indian just to translate this for us. It's mostly based on philosophy. Incorporated in this rich literature is a complex cosmology. Hindus believe that the universe is a great sphere, a cosmic egg, within which are numerous concentric heavens, hells, oceans, and continents, with India at the center. They believe that the time is both degenerative, going from the Golden Age, through to intermediate periods of decreasing goodness to the present age. So the Golden Age is already finished. It's never going to get any better. It's just going to keep going down until there's nothing left. At the end, the universe is destroyed by fire and flood, and a new Golden Age begins. So it's never going to finish. It just, somebody keeps refilling the hourglass with sand, and when it gets empty, they fill it again. Is the basic theory. Human life, too, is cyclic, involving transmigration After death, the soul leaves the body and is reborn in the body of another person, an animal, vegetables, or minerals, such as this tree I was talking about. This process of endless entanglement in activity and rebirth is called samsara. So if you prescribed in this thought, in this tree that I was talking about was some person before, and he came back and now his soul is in this tree, and he's being treated better as a tree than he was as a human being. It doesn't make any sense.
Another thing, I thought it's very new information for me. I thought it's transferred to human body or animal body, an animal too.
No,
But
anything.
now from what you're saying, it could be a tree.
Even a rock.
So I was thinking that they don't eat meat because from this,
Because they're afraid they'll be eating some of their family, yes.
But they are vegetarians. So,
Yes, they won't eat meat because they think this person is their family. But if it says it can be mineral or vegetable,
yeah,
then they still might be eating their family.
that's,
If I come back as okra, you're eating me in your soup.
that's very strange. Because from the same concept, why do they eat vegetable? Yes, if they believe that maybe they are eating their grandfathers or fathers.
I don't know. It's a strange religion for me. I think maybe for them it's not. Hindus believe in an uncreated, eternal, and infinite, transcendent, all-embracing principle which comprising itself being a non-being is the whole soul reality, the ultimate cause and foundation, source and goal of all existence. If you could just understand that verse, you'd probably be okay, but that was a very short paragraph. I can understand any of it.
Nothing.
Thus, ultimate reality is called Brahman. Brahman is the highest class of the four caste system. As the all, Brahman causes the universe and all beings to emanate from itself, transforms itself into the universe, or assumes its appearance. Brahman is in all things as the self of all living beings. Brahman is the creator. That didn't make any sense. Brahman is the creator, preserver, and transformer, and reabsorber of everything. But it just said Brahman is in all things, and Brahman is a person. Although it is a being in itself, without attributes and qualities, and hence impersonal, it may also be conceived of as a personal high God, usually as Vishnu or Shiva. A little bit of the understanding I had of the Buddhists is they believe that actually God is inside each person. This is kind of what this is saying, that each person has Brahman inside him. But what if I came back as a rock? Is Brahman still inside me? Brahman's supposed to be the highest class and the highest being, but this is on the ground and people are walking on it. And I know Hindus and Buddhists believe that the feet is the worst part of the body and the head is the soul. In Thailand, if you go and touch a young kid on the top of the head, if you just pat it, say, oh, you're a good boy, they want to kill you immediately. Why you touch my soul while you touch my head? They will fight, they will kick you, throw dirt on you, do all kinds of things. So, some of these things are not making sense to me, and I'm sure they're not making sense to you either. Ahimsa, non-injury. A further characteristic of Hinduism is the idea of, or the absence of the desire to harm. Most people don't want to harm each other or something. Historically, it's unrelated to vegetarianism. I'm sure they said vegetables is also God. Another person, an animal, vegetables, or minerals. And now over here, I think if we read this, we're still not going to be any closer to understanding Hinduism than we are right now. And I don't think it's going to do me any good to read this to you. Because believe me, it gets worse down here. This is mostly based on philosophy. Somebody has spent a lot of time sitting under a tree thinking this and that and this and that and this and that. We're going to skip these and go to the caste system, which is something we need to go over because you could be talking to somebody and he'd be of the lower class and
So they have four.
four class. Yes. The religious sanction and framework given in the caste system in India have made it a particularly powerful social tool, so they use it for socialism. A rebellion against caste becomes a rebellion against religion. So if I'm the lower caste and I start rebelling against it, I'm rebelling against the religion. So they're using the religion to keep these people inside their caste. This has been a factor in its remarkable endurance to this day. The caste system appears to have evolved sometime after the arrival into northern India of the Indo-European tribes known as the Aryans, a nomadic people around 1500 BC. 1500 BC, after the collapse of the Indus Valley civilization. So even it was not a part of the original religion. So this caste system is man-made and added to the religion. The Hindu scriptures teach that there are many gods. As I said before, the man the other day said 3,300,000. And I don't know if they can make more or not. That I don't know. Maybe they can add to them.
It is constant.
I guess every time somebody prays to a rock and a tree and wins the lottery, you can add another one. So I guess you can add more. The Hindu scriptures teach that there are many gods, incarnations of God. So that's gods that become alive again. Persons of God, their everything is God, Brahman. In spite of the belief that self, all of living beings, actually Brahman. An oppressive caste system evolved in which the Brahmins, the priestly caste, possess spiritual supremacy by birth. So just by being the higher caste, they are superior. They are the teachers of the Vedas and excluded from religious status, and their sole duty in life is to serve meekly. This is the underhand. The other three castes and their thousands of subcastes. Varnas, the Aryans divided human society into four groups. Varma, Sanskrit word for color. The four Varmas in descending order of status is the Brahmins, priests, Kshatriyas, the kings and warriors, the Vaishyas, the farmers and merchants, and the Sudras are the servants in the lowest caste. Those who performed the most menial tasks, such as the sweepers, and those who collected waste were left out of the caste system altogether, becoming outcast or chandalas. So they've added another caste. You're so low, you're not even part of the caste. Now we go into what they call gods and god-men. There are men who are gods incarnated. Kind of sounds like they got some of this into Christianity somehow. The Trimurti, Sanskrit, three forms. In Hinduism, a triad of the three great gods, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, or Shiva. Scholars consider the Trimurti doctrine as an attempt to reconcile a difference between monotheistic approaches and one another with the philosophic doctrine of the ultimate reality, or Brahman. Although sometimes called the Hindu Trinity. Maybe this is where the Trinity comes from. Trimurti has as little similarity to the Christian Trinity. The doctrine was given classical expression in the Kalidas poem in the 4th and 5th centuries. Next we're going to talk about Rama, one of the most widely spread worship Hindu deities. The embodiment of chivalry and virtue, although there are three Ramas mentioned in Indian tradition, so there's not one, there's three. The name is specifically associated with Ramchandra. We need Shaquille here. The seventh incarnation. So this God has been incarnated 7 times. So he's died and come back 7 times in 7 different human beings. It is possible that Rama was an actual historic figure, a tribal hero of ancient India who was later deified, kind of like the way the Catholics do with saints. Somebody dies and they make them a saint. But the Christians, the saint doesn't come back. In Hinduism, the saint comes back and is born again. His story is told briefly in a great epic of the Bharata dynasty and at great length in the Romance of Rama. Reference to Rama as an incarnation of Vishnu appear in the early centuries after Christ. There was, however, probably no special worship of him before the 11th century. So the Hindus did not worship these gods until 1,100 years after. So this is another man-made thing. This is one of the things I brought up when I was studying Buddhism. Because all the books I had never said anything about a statue, a gold statue. Never said anything about how they do the things now. And when I asked, they said, oh, this just marks a place of prayer. They spend millions of dollars on those places just to mark the place of prayer. And there are millions of those all over the world.
And never mentioned something about the statue of Buddha?
No.
Yes.
Didn't say anything about that in any of the books I read. In Hindu mythology, the divine monkey chief, so now you have a monkey that's a god, a central figure in the great Hindu epic, The Romance of Rama. Hanuman is the child of a nymph by the wind god, accompanied by a host of monkeys. He aided Rama in recovering his wife Sita. So Rama, the god, couldn't help his wife, so this king of the monkeys helped him. So a man helped God to do something. Sita from the divine Ravana. His heroic exploits are many. He acted as Rama's spy. Now the god did not know what you was doing, so he sent this monkey god to watch you. And he was not a god, he was a man. So they sent him to watch you, so that God would know what you were doing. A beneficent guardian spirit. He is worshipped in the form of a monkey with a red face, who stands erect like a human. Temples in his honor are numerous. In his devotion to Rama, Hanuman is upheld as a model for human devotion to God, an attitude depicted by South Indian bronze sculptors. He is also a popular deity in Japan, so this is even went over to Japan, this monkey god. The Hananu monkey, Presbyterus entellus, one of the most common Indian monkeys, is named after this god and is thus generally looked upon as sacred. There's many places I see it all the time on the television where they won't even touch the monkeys. They're all over this temple and they just drive the people crazy. They run up and snatch the food and take the food, and some women even come out in the mornings and put food out for the monkeys, and they believe, and there's thousands of them, so there's thousands of monkey gods. How do you know which one to pray to? I don't know. Next we're going to talk about one called Ganesha, also called Ganesh. It's an elephant-headed Hindu god who is the son of Lord Shiva and his wife Parvati. He is also revered by Jains and important in the art, myth, and ritual of Buddhist Asia. So it's a man with an elephant head and a trunk. One account of his birth is that Parvati formed him from the rubbings of her body so that he might stand guard at the door while she bathed. So she's a god who could not protect herself, so she made a man with an elephant's head to guard the door so nobody else could get in. It says they were in a battle and his head was cut off in the battle. To ease Parvati's grief, Shiva promised to cut off the head of the first creature that he came across and join it to the body. This was the baby elephant. So the first thing they came across was an elephant. She cut the head off the elephant and put it on this man's body. Next we're going to talk about one called Krishna, one of the most widely revered and most popular of all Indian divinities, worshipped as the eighth carnation, or the avatar, or the avatara. You've seen lately there's a movie called Avatar, and this came from this word. So he's been incarnated 8 times. So he's a god who has died and come back and died and come back 8 times. Krishna became the focus of numerous devotional cults, which over the centuries have produced a wealth of religious poetry, music, and painting. If you've ever been to the airport in the United States, I know you have seen his followers. They're called Hare Krishnas.
Shaved.
Shaved except for something sticking out at the top. And they run around beating on cymbals
and read the scarce
and singing a song, Krishna, Krishna.
Yes.
I know. Yes, these are the followers of this god. The basic sources of Christian mythology are from the epic Mahabharata and its 5th century AD appendix, the Harivanasa, particularly books 10 and 11 of the Bhagavata Purana. I know I'm not saying any of these words right, but that's okay. Now we're going to talk about the Avatara. in Hinduism is the incarnation of a deity in human or animal form to counteract some particular evil in the world. So they believe that one of the gods is going to come back in human form to defeat some evil. Kind of sounds like the Antichrist, doesn't it? Some of theirs sounds like they have taken it from the teachings of the Christians or the Muslims, but written in different form to depict Indians as the gods instead. Although we don't believe that the person coming back to defeat the Antichrist is a god. He's a man, and it's Jesus Christ. The number of Vishnu's avatars is sometimes extended or their identities changed, so there's more than one avatar, according to local preferences. So they're saying that anytime there's a lot of evil, this man comes back and gets rid of the evil and we start over. Thus Krishna, in some areas, elevated the rank of a deity or god, and his half-brother, so now God has a half-brother. Whenever there is decline of righteousness and rise of unrighteousness, then I send forth myself for the protection of the good, for the destruction of the wicked, and for the establishment of righteousness. I come into being from age to age. God has to make himself to man to defeat the evil. This makes no common sense to me because God is all-knowing and everything. He doesn't know this evil is coming. He didn't send it. And if it's only a man that needs to defeat it, he can't make any man to defeat it. He has to come back himself. It doesn't make sense. Oh, new gods every day. The adaptability of Hinduism to changing conditions is illustrated by the appearance in the Hindu pantheon of a new divinity of special utility and equicative society. This is the goddess Santosi Mahata, first worshipped widely by the women in many cities, so the women have their own god, and it comes every day. The new goddess was unheard of a few years ago and has no basis in any Puranic myth, so it's a relatively new god. It's only a few years old. Santosi is believed grants practical and oblivious blessings. Oh, so this makes sense. The women pray to this goddess for refrigerators, radios, and TVs, and mashallah. So that's how the wives get their husband to buy them a new refrigerator. Now we're going to worship and ritual. In daily ritual, a Hindu, generally the wife, who's thought to have more power to intercede with the gods, makes offerings of fruit or flowers before a small shrine in the house. Many villages and all sizable towns have temples where priests perform ceremonies throughout the day. Sunrise prayers and noises to awaken the god within the Holy of Holies, bathing, clothing, and fanning the god, feeding the god, and distributing the remains of the food to worshippers. So they put food in front of whatever god they're praying to, and they wash it and fan it, keep it cool. When God is finished with the food, then they gather all the food up and give it to the people. Puja, or Hindu worship, consists essentially of an invocation, a reception, and the entertainment of God as a royal guest. Normally consists of 16 people. Invocation by the omnipresent God is invited to direct his attention to the particular worship. The offering of a seat, water for washing the feet, for the hands, and for rinsing the mouth. A bath, a garment of sacred thread, perfumes, flowers, incense, a lamp, food, and homage, and a circumambulation, or tawaf, of the image and dismissal by God. In the temple of the god was worshipped by the rites of puja, reference to sacred being or object. He was awakened in the morning along with his goddess. This is very confusing. We've read 3 or 4 pages and I don't know how many gods I've talked about already. We're going to skip down to this next paragraph where it says, can we turn the air conditioning on? It's starting to get warm in here. Prophet Muhammad Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in